SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි.
Tonight, no strings attached. The government insists that the planned $500 million loan from India doesn't bind Sri Lanka to before year-end provincial polls. Matter with the jab. Local study finds antibody response decline in all age groups after 12 weeks of full Sinopharm vaccination, especially among over 60s. The T-cell response, however, persists. Same old. Amnesty International hurls a series of allegations against the government over treatment of the Muslim community. 15th from the island, legendary Sri Lankan spinner Rangana Herath given honorary lifetime membership of the MCC. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Tuesday, the 19th of October, 2021.
හිරුගේ පළමු කිරණමෙන් රන්වන් බුද්ධි තිමත් සමකට.
Lever Aish Kaha Face Cream.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanayak. The government today conceded that the country's precious tea production has seen a decline of late and urged the growers not to lose faith as the state addresses the fertiliser saga. Speaking at the Cabinet media briefing today, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana noted that importation of chemical fertiliser is a stopgap measure until the local organic fertiliser production catches up. In the meantime, during the briefing, it was also asked whether the planned $500 million loan from India intended for fuel purchases comes with conditions linked to the provincial council elections.
During the Cabinet media briefing today, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana conceded that there is a drop in tea productions at present, though it was not the case at the end of August. However, he sent out a plea to all tea growers, urging them not to be discouraged in face of the production drop and place their trust in the government's program to improve the quality of Ceylon tea.
Given the backdrop of the difficulties that the tea cultivators and the farmers encountered during last couple of months, and also considering the fact that there had been a quality drop of a tea that were produced in the factories, government has taken the decision to import sulfate of ammonia as the base of nitrogen for a given period of time until the production of organic fertilizer comes to a decent level in the country. So we have taken that decision. Yes, we will import certain quantities during next couple of weeks, and we will utilize the same mechanism that we used to distribute fertilizer during last 3 months. That was, we will distribute via the tea factories depending on the supply of green leaves. So we have a assessment. Tea board will overlook that operation. Once the fertilizer is imported, we will distribute them to the factories, and from there, depending on the leaf supplies, the farmers would be getting their quota. That's the mechanism we try to implement. Yes, we will import certain quantities, so we'll very clearly state the fact that we will ensure that we protect the quality and the quantity of production of tea in the country. In fact, we are recording some higher levels of tea production in the country, partly thanks to the prevailing good climatic conditions with the decent rainfalls. So we expect that good climatic conditions to continue. And also we will supply fertilizer, so there will be a very good year ahead in relation to tea production of the country.
Meanwhile, there was also a question regarding the planned $500 million loan from India intending for fuel purchases, carrying conditions binding the island to hold provincial polls before the end of this year.
මම නිශ්චිතවම කියනවා පළාත් සභා මැතිවරණය කිසිදු කොන්දේසියක් ලෙස එහි අන්තර්ගත වෙන්නේ නැහැ. තවමත් සාකච්ඡා යන්නේ. දැන් මම විදුලි බල ඇමතිවරයා වශයෙන් සිටිද්දී ඉන්දියාවත් එක්ක මිලියන 100ක පුනර්ජනනීය බල ශක්තියින් සඳහා වූ ගිවිසුමක් අසංගත ඩොලර් මිලියන 100ක. ඉතින් ඒකට අදාළ ගෙවන කාල සීමා ආදී විවිධ මේ ගිවිසුම් තියෙනවා. නමුත් කිසිසේත්ම පළාත් සභා මැතිවරණය කොන්දේසියක් ලෙස මේ ණය යෝජනා ක්‍රමයට ඇතුළත් කියලා කියන එක අපි මුළුමනින්ම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරනවා.
There was also speculation regarding payment for rice imports from Myanmar.
බුරුමෙන් මිලදී ගන්නා සහල්වලට ණය පිළිබඳව තන සාකච්ඡාවක් සිදු වෙලා නැහැ. අදාළ මුදල් ගෙවීම කරලා එම සහල් ප්‍රමාණය මිලදී ගැනීමට ආණ්ඩුවට හැකියාවක් තිබෙනවා.
In the meantime, the Cabinet has given the go-ahead for the establishment of an industrial zone within the Divisional Secretariat Division of Valipitia in the district of Matara, in land approximately to 200 acres. The Cabinet has also approved the reconstruction of Mahamodara Maternity Hospital and to this end enter into a loan agreement of 28 million euros with the KfW Bank, Germany. The project and another supplementary loan agreement have been signed with the same bank to obtain another supplementary sum of 13 million euros for the same project thereafter. The German government has expressed their concurrence to convert the 13 million euros obtained as a supplementary amount into a financial grant. Amending existing laws and regulations relevant to banning cattle slaughter in Sri Lanka and to table them in Parliament too was green-lighted by the Cabinet. The approval of the Cabinet of Ministers was granted on the 28th of September last year to prohibit cattle slaughter in order to increase local agriculture and local milk production and to amend the laws and regulations applicable. Amendment of the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance has also been approved to formalize the implementation of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Another proposal given the Cabinet go-ahead is the amendments to the Canadian Marriage and Divorce Act. According to a certain judgment, the provisions pertaining to the law authorizing the marriage of a minor with the consent of a competent authority should be replaced as parents' permission or consent to an under-18's marriage invalid before the law.
මිලියන 18.8 නිවස ලක්ෂ 5ක් ගෙවා දැන්ම වෙන් කරවා ගන්න Mulberry Residence.
A local study has revealed that the antibody response declined in all age groups 12 weeks after being fully vaccinated with the Sinopharm vaccine, especially among those over the age of 60. However, the study finds that the T-cell response persists. This had been conducted by a group of virologists from Sri Lanka and the University of Oxford to determine the persistence of immune response of the Sinopharm vaccine in the island.
The pandemic situation in the country today is very much under control, with the health system seeing a steady reduction of daily cases over the last weeks. From a daily caseload of around 5,000 in mid-August, the situation has improved to 570 new cases by yesterday. Thanks to a hefty vaccination drive, 58.5% of Sri Lanka's total population are fully vaccinated. As a result, COVID infections in the community may not be as obvious as they once were.
ආසාදිතයන් මීට වඩා වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් ඉන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද ඔවුන්ට රෝග ලක්ෂණ පහළ වීමක් සිදු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එම නිසා ඔවුන් පරීක්ෂණ සඳහා යොමු වීමක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් එවැනි තත්ත්වයක් තුල අපිට මේ අසන්නට ලැබෙන දත්තයන්ට වඩා වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් මේ සමාජයේ ඉන්න පුළුවන්. මෙවැනි තත්ත්වයක් තුල හම්බු පරීක්ෂණ මීට වඩා වැඩිපුර ව්‍යාප්ත කළ යුතුයි.
With the prevailing COVID wave was at its peak, with the country's healthcare system under severe stress, the COVID home treatment program was introduced to treat asymptomatic and patients with mild symptoms at their residences. The move paid dividends as it enabled more and more patients with serious complications to be accommodated at hospitals and COVID treatment centers.
We have treated nearly 100,000 patients by this time. Fortunately, we have hospitalized only 1.4%, that is less than 1,500 people. So that is the real achievement.
Though vaccinating adults is simple enough, immunization of children is a sensitive matter. But the expert call is that if your child is deemed eligible for the jab, get it soon.
We have realized that the small children and even adolescents don't get much symptoms even though they get the infection of COVID-19. So parents will not realize that they are having this illness. So this is the serious situation where this disease can spread to close by contacts like the other family members who are at a higher risk. All the parents need to understand the risk of this infection spread through your children. Because of that, you have to educate them to go ahead with the correct hygienic practices.
With it being decided that only the Pfizer vaccine is suitable for children, a batch of 304,200 doses of it touched down in the island this morning. Sri Lanka has now received 2.8 million doses of the Pfizer jab. Meanwhile, on Thursday, the vaccination of 18 and 19-year-olds will go island-wide. But as a pilot project, inoculation of that age group in the Colombo district was launched on Friday and it continued today as well.
පළවෙනි දවස් දෙකේ අපි 175ක් ළමයින්ගේ ප්‍රමාණය කවර් කරන්න ප්ලෑන් කරලා තියුණා. අධ්‍යාපන දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවෙන් දීපු ළමයින්ගේ මුළු ගණන උනේ 20688ක්. නමුත් පළවෙනි දවසේ එන්නත්කරණය සඳහා ළමයින්ගේ පැමිණීම උනේ ඒ දීපු ප්‍රමාණයෙන් ළමයි 145ක් පමණයි. දෙවැනි දවසේදී ඒ ප්‍රමාණය ටිකක් වැඩි වෙලා තියුණා. සමහර වෙලාවට දෙමව්පියන්ට අපි ගැන තිබුච්ච විශ්වාසය වැඩිවීමක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක නිසා අපිට 154ක 55ක වගේ ප්‍රමාණයක් දෙවැනි දවසේදී සිසුන් පැමිණියා. නමුත් මෙහිදී අපි කියන්න ඕන දෙමව්පියන්ට එන්නත්කරණයේදී අපි ළමයින් 15000ක් පමණ එන්නත්කරණය සිද්ධ කරා. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ ළමයින්ගෙන් කිසිදු ළමයෙක්ට කිසිදු සංකූලතාවයක් අපිට වාර්තා වුන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක නිසා කරුණාකරලා සෞඛ්‍ය සේවය සහ අපේ නිලධාරීන් ගැන විශ්වාසය තියාගන්න. මේ පැමිණෙන සෙනසුරාදා දිනේදී උදේ 9 සිට 1 දක්වා කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ මේ එන්නත්කරණය සිදු කරගන්න නොහැකි වූ ළමයින් සඳහා අවුරුදු 18 19 වයස් කාණ්ඩයේ ළමයින් සඳහා එන්නත්කරණය සිදු වෙනවා.
What's more, a combined study has been conducted by a group of virologists from Sri Lanka and the University of Oxford to determine the persistence of immune responses of the Sinopharm vaccine in the island, especially with over 14 million people inoculated with the jab in the country. In order to determine the persistence of antibody and T-cell responses following the second dose, blood samples were obtained at 12 weeks following the second dose of the vaccine in 203 individuals from 323 Sri Lankans from Colombo who were previously evaluated for immune responses to the Sinopharm jab, who were tested at 4 weeks after the first dose and 2 weeks after the second dose. SARS-CoV-2 specific total antibodies were measured in 20 to 39, 40 to 59 age categories and those above 60 years of age 12 weeks after the second dose of the vaccine. The experts have concluded that antibody responses declined in all age groups, especially in those above 60 years of age, while T-cell responses persisted. The study adds that the effect of waning of immunity on hospitalization and severe disease should be assessed by long-term efficacy studies.
Now, meanwhile, despite repeated words of advice from health authorities, people continue to cross provincial borders, disregarding travel restrictions.
Even though Sri Lanka has made progress in handling the COVID-19 situation, the poor display of some members of the public seem to be compromising the safety of the whole population. Tightening the interprovincial restrictions until the 21st, which marks the end of the long weekend, authorities have continuously advised and requested the public to not lower their guard by venturing out on excursions. But the scenes do not suggest that the advice is taken seriously. People continue to flock to popular travel destinations, disregarding interprovincial travel restrictions. What's alarming is that people choose this behavior knowing very well why the restrictions are in place and that the police are lying in wait at some provincial borders.
ඊයේ දිනය තුල බස්නාහිර පළාතේ මායිම ආවරණය වන පරිදි මාර්ග බාධක 13ක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන ලැබුවා. සංචරණ සීමා උල්ලංඝනය කරමින් සහ නිසි පරිදි අවසර නොලබා මෙම මාර්ග බාධක හරහා ගමන් කිරීමට පැමිණි වාහන 265ක් සහ පුද්ගලයන් 469 දෙනෙකු අවවාද කොට හරවා යැවීමට නිලධාරීන් විසින් කටයුතු කරනු ලැබුවා. අධිවේගී මාර්ගය සහ බස්නාහිර පළාත ආවරණය වන පරිදි ඊයේ දිනය තුල විශේෂ මෙහෙයුම් දෙකක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනු ලැබුවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම ඊයේ දිනේ පුරාම පරීක්ෂා කිරීම සිදු කරනු ලැබුවා. එහිදී වාහන 4636ක් පරීක්ෂා කොට තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම පළාත් සංචරණ සීමා උල්ලංඝනය කිරීමෙන් අධිවේගී මාර්ගයට ඇතුළු වීමට පැමිණි වාහන 204ක් අවවාද කොට හරවා යැවීමට මෙම නිලධාරීන් විසින් කටයුතු කරනු ලැබුවා.
Big 3.
Now, Sri Lanka's Muslim community today celebrate the birthday of Prophet Muhammad in solidarity with the Muslim brethren around the world. In his message to mark the occasion, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that the best way to pay respect to Prophet Muhammad is by striving to disseminate his vision to strengthen coexistence among the people.
Members of the Islamic faith across the country and around the world today celebrate the birth anniversary of Prophet Muhammad, which is of significant religious and social importance to Muslims around the world. In Yemen, thousands of Houthi supporters marked Prophet Muhammad's birthday last night, rallying in the country's capital. Members of the Islamic faith in Sri Lanka too made religious observances today on the occasion of the Prophet's birthday. Celebrating the occasion, a program was held at the Jummah Masjid Mosque in Maradana today, presided by Minister of Justice Ali Sabri.
නබිනායක එතුමානන් ඉපදිච්ච පරිසරය තුළ සාමය සමගිය කිසි දෙයක් නැහැ. අනිකරම තිබුණේ තිරිසන් සමාජයක්. ගෑනු දරුවෙක් ඉපදුනාම තාත්තා පන පිටින් අල්ලගෙන ගිහිල්ලා වලලා වහනවා. එකිනෙකාව මරා කොටා ගන්න. අල්ලපු ගෙදර ඉන්න මනුස්සයා මරලා ඒ මනුස්සයාගේ හිස් කබල අරගෙන ඒකෙන් මදුපානය. එවැනි සමාජයකට සාමය උදා කිරීමට සම්බන්ධ නබිතුමා පැමිණි. ඉතින් ඒ පරපුරෙන් ආපු මුස්ලිම් ජනතාවට විශාල වගකීමක් තියෙනවා. සාමය, සමගිය, සංහිඳියාව, එකමුතුකම සහෝදරත්වයේ වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී සිටිනවා.
Meanwhile, yesterday, a special event was organized at the Colombo Municipal Council premises to mark the birth anniversary of Prophet Muhammad. Extending wishes on the occasion, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said the best way to pay special respect to Prophet Muhammad is to strive to further disseminate his vision to strengthen coexistence among the people. He added that it is most timely than ever before to apply the humanitarian philosophy of Prophet Muhammad maintained through his life towards social welfare today. Meanwhile, in his message, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa reminded the people of Islamic faith to take the life of Prophet Muhammad as an example to win over the challenges of COVID-19 in such difficult times.
Now then, Amnesty International has published a new report which hurls accusations and criticism at the government for its alleged discrimination of the Muslim community. With no acknowledgement of why certain measures were put in place by the government, the body says that from anti-terrorism laws and forced cremations to niqabs and madrasas, the Sri Lankan government has pursued a blatantly discriminatory policy agenda against Muslims. But from the government's side, the message is that it looks after the interests of all communities.
A new report by Amnesty International says that Sri Lanka's Muslim community has suffered consistent discrimination, harassment and violence since 2013, culminating in the adoption of government policies explicitly targeting the minority group. Amnesty International's Deputy Secretary General Kyle Ward is quoted in the report, which was published yesterday, saying that, quote, while anti-Muslim sentiment in Sri Lanka is nothing new, the situation has regressed sharply in recent years, and that incidents of violence against Muslims committed with the tacit approval of the authorities have occurred with alarming frequency. He says that this has been accompanied by the adoption by the current government of rhetoric and policies that have been openly hostile to Muslims, unquote. The report notes that this escalating hostility began with the anti-halal campaign of 2013, when Sinhala Buddhist nationalist groups successfully lobbied to end the halal certification of food. It lists various flashpoints since then, all the way through to the aftermath of the Easter Sunday terror attacks of 2019. Pointing to the one-time policy of mandatory cremation of the remains of all COVID-19 victims, Amnesty International accuses the current government of continuing to target and scapegoat the Muslim population to distract from political and economic issues. It further says that the authorities are still seeking to implement discriminatory legislation, including a niqab ban and a ban on madrasas. Allegations are also levelled at the use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act targeting Muslims. Amnesty International's Deputy Secretary General Kyle Ward says that, quote, from anti-terrorism laws and forced cremations to niqabs and madrasas, the Sri Lankan government has pursued a blatantly discriminatory policy agenda against Muslims, unquote. This report, meanwhile, drew a response from Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana today.
As a government, we will ensure that all the citizens of the country, irrespective of their caste, creed and nationality, are respected as Sri Lankan civilians. We, as the government, will ensure that all the communities, including Muslims, Tamils and Sinhalese of this country, have a decent lifestyle. That's the wish of the people of the country, and that's the wish of the government of this country. And that was, we were mandated to look after the people of this country. But we know since 2019, with that unfortunate incident that took place in first quarter of 2019, there had been certain issues in relation to the questioning and also in relation to certain incidents that took place in the country. But they were not particularly aiming at a community, but some sectors were questioned in relation to incident that took place in 2019. Apart from that, we are a responsible government. We want to reiterate the fact that we will look after the interest of all the communities of the country, including Muslims, Tamils and Sinhalese.
An Indian fisherman remained missing after an Indian poaching vessel that attempted to escape from the Sri Lankan Navy with the use of force collided with a naval craft and descended to the depths of the ocean last evening. The incident occurred in the seas northwest of the Kovilan lighthouse in Jaffna. Sri Lankan Navy says that they were giving chase to Indian trawlers poaching in Sri Lankan waters. During the process, fishermen in one trawler had reverted to aggressive maneuvers, ramming their vessel into the naval craft. The trawler, however, had sunk as a result with 3 fishermen on board. Afterwards, Sri Lankan Navy rescued 2 fishermen while one remains missing. Rescue operations are still underway in search of the missing Indian fishermen. The rescued fishermen have been handed over to the Kites police. Now, the incident comes at a time when northern fishing community in Jaffna have staged a protest at sea, urging authorities to protect the Sri Lankan fishing grounds from poaching Indian fishermen who use harmful bottom trawling methods. The topic of third-party funding was discussed at the 6th Committee of the 76th Session of the United Nations General Assembly on Administration of Justice of the UN. Now, addressing the session, Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, Mohan Peiris, highlighted the possible pitfalls of third-party funding and the reforms needed to address them. While saying that third-party funding is neither permitted nor restricted, Peiris noted that any reforms should take into account the need for a proper arbitration centre to make a determination on it.
Sri Lanka recognizes the vital role that UNCITRAL has played in harmonizing and modernizing the international trade law and in effect contribute to good governance. Sri Lanka supports the work of the working groups, in particular the working groups 2 and 3. With regard to working group 3, Sri Lanka welcomes reforms proposed to the UNCITRAL rules of arbitration on third-party funding. We are, however, concerned that all reform proposals leave third-party funded arbitration claims as a matter to be determined by the arbitral tribunal once constituted. In fact, this would mean that where third-party funding is not allowed, it would be a matter of jurisdiction and not of admission. We are of the view that where third-party funding is not permitted or restricted, it is a decision that needs to be addressed at the outset and one that determines the admissibility of the request for arbitration. We therefore believe that reform proposals should consider requiring the respective arbitration centre, or where no centre is mentioned, any other mechanism constituted to consider the admissibility of the arbitral reference prior to registering the same and communicating with the respondent. The underlying concern is that the state should not have to incur arbitral costs in challenging the third-party funding as permitted before an arbitral tribunal when such permission is denied outright by treaty. We are also appreciative of the fact that third-party funding is permitted in some common law jurisdictions. Now, TPF has and continues to become more prevalent across the legal market, both in terms of the number of cases being funded and in the number of specialist firms offering funding. Although no formal regulation of TPF has been founded to be necessary, self-education in the form of a code of practice is highly advisable to provide a layer of protection to funded clients. Sri Lanka wishes to study this with care to ensure that any new practice would be consonant with our law. It is important to appreciate that the Code of Conduct requires funders to behave reasonably and sets the standards for the capital adequacy of funders, including the specific limited circumstances in which funders may be permitted to withdraw from a case. Now, some questions occur, such as whether it would be mandatory for a party to disclose that it is funded. There is no general requirement, for example, in English law, for a party to disclose a TPF arrangement to any opposing party or to the court or tribunal. However, from an ethical standpoint, disclosing the existence of funding in arbitrations is desirable given the potential for conflict of interest between a third-party funder and the tribunal. It has been observed that this is of particular relevance if a tribunal has sat in a number of cases where the claimant has been funded by the same funder, or if the funder is evaluating a case in which the funded claimant is represented by the tribunal's law firm or the chambers. We take cognizance of the position under English law, which we look to for precedent, that a party is able to share privileged and confidential material with a limited number of third parties under an express agreement to keep that material confidential, thereby preserving its privileged status. To protect against inadvertent waiver of a client's privilege, parties should enter into a non-disclosure agreement with the funder from the outset.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, oil prices rose today as a supply crunch in natural gas, electricity and coal continued across the globe, while falling temperatures in China revived concerns over whether the world's biggest energy consumer can meet domestic energy demands. Brent crude rose 65 cents to $84.98 a barrel after falling 0.6% yesterday. The contract is still up nearly 7% this month. US West Texas Intermediate futures meanwhile gained 87 cents to $83.31, having risen 0.2% in the previous session and nearly 10% this month. Traders and analysts say that with temperatures falling as the northern hemisphere winter approaches and heating demand increases, prices of oil, coal and natural gas are likely to remain elevated. Colder weather has already started to grip China with close to freezing temperatures forecast for northern areas. The Marylebone Cricket Club announced their new honorary life members today, in which Sri Lanka's outstanding left-arm spinner Rangana Herath is also included among the 18 new members. Herath was awarded with this membership over the 433 test wickets bagged in his career, spanning almost 2 decades and being featured in the top 10 of all-time test wicket takers. Further, he is the 15th Sri Lankan to receive this membership. The list also includes England's leading test run scorer Alistair Cook and Ian Bell. South African legends Hashim Amla, Herschel Gibbs, Jacques Kallis and Morne Morkel have also received the honour. Axel Blackwell and Damien Martin of Australia and Harbhajan Singh and Javagal Srinath of India too are some of the members who have received this honorary lifetime membership. Honorary life membership is also awarded to individuals who have made an exceptional contribution to MCC or to the game in general. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.